something a little bit different. We're going to be looking at a small part of my F1 model car collection. Now, before we begin, we are trying our very hardest to get to 1,000 subscribers on the channel, and the support recently has been incredible, so thank you ever so much for that. But we still have a little ways to go yet, so if you'd like to help me get there and you enjoyed the video, then you guys all know where the button is. I won't patronise you with that. But if you enjoy, then please consider it. I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean the world to me, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's get into it now. I don't think I've mentioned on the channel before that F1 is a big passion of mine. I've watched it since I was a kid, and it has very much exploded in popularity recently. In the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I would say, especially after last year's season finale. So I've been watching it for a long time, and I've had this collection of model cars for a fairly long time as well. Now, I got these through my grandfather, and I believe they were I think they were like a monthly subscription to like a magazine or something, and you got this, you got these cars with them, with the magazine as like a monthly thing, I think. But first, what we're going to look at is something slightly different than just those individual model cars. We have got Hot Wheels Racing McLaren. Now, it might show up on the camera, yeah, it looks a bit dusty, but I've wiped it and everything and it won't come off, so I don't know what it is, but it looks like dust, but it's not. I promise. I promise, guys. Okay, so this is a Hot Wheels Racing McLaren MP14 set. Obviously, 1998, Mick Hakkinen and David Coulthard won. Mick Hakkinen won the Drivers' Championship, and I think the two of them together won the Constructors' Championship in the. Can we see there? Yeah, the now famous McLaren, when they. I think this. I don't know if this was the first year that they switched to this livery, but it was one of the first for sure. As you can see, as I previously mentioned, Mick Hakkinen and David Coulthard. And guys, you have to be 14 plus, so if anyone is under 14, then you might have to click off the video, because I don't want to get in trouble, okay? So, we have a little bit on the back here. The team is McLaren Mercedes, the chassis is the MP413, the engine is the Mercedes-Benz. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. Mercedes-Benz V10. And the tyres were Bridgestones. And then on the back here, yeah, just some information about warranty, etc. Now, it says limited edition 9,998. So does that mean this was the 9,998th? You know, this was number 9,998. I'm not sure. It's made by Mattel in 1999, as you can see there. So yeah, these are pretty cool. I mean, they're still sealed. I mean, the box is understandably pretty beat up, because it's quite an old thing. I've had it for, I would say, 15 years at least. But yeah, I mean, it's still sealed. I don't think I've ever opened it. So who knows, maybe this will be worth something in years to come. But yeah, that was just something I wanted to quickly show you to begin with. Excuse me. So this is what the rest of them are going to look like. So first of all, we have, as you can see there, the McLaren Honda MP4 5B, or yeah, 5B, 1990. So this, again, they look dusty, but I promise that I've wiped them all with an alcohol wipe, but nothing seems to be coming off. So this was, I think, Ayrton Senna won the championship in this car. This was, I think, Ayrton Senna won the championship in this car. 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 2081, 2082, 2083, 2084, 2085, 2086, 2087, 2088, 2089, 2090, 2091, 2092, 2093, 2094, 2095, 2096, 2097, Senna and Prost took each other out on the first lap at Suzuka, but this is one of those iconic Shell, sort of Shell/Marlboro liveried, Honda-engined McLarens from the late 80s, early 90s. Really beautiful cars. Iconic livery, purely from Prost and Senna. And this is just a very iconic era of F1. Not just the McLaren, but this era in general. You had, a lot of fantastic champions driving on the grid at the same time. You had PK, Prost, Senna, Mansell. I think, sort of mid-80s, you had Niki Lauda as well. But, excuse me, a really iconic time. And yeah, it's an unmistakable car. I mean, even not the biggest F1 fans will probably recognise this livery and this car shape. I think it was maybe the 1988 car that was the most dominant in terms of over the other cars on the grid. But they had a sort of, I think it was a 3 or 4 year reign of dominance where they just, they couldn't be touched by any other car on the grid. So, very special car, very iconic, and really cool that I've got a model of it. So that's the first one. We'll go for another McLaren next. So this is, I don't know if it's the first McLaren, but it's certainly one of the first McLarens. The infamous McLaren papaya orange colour that they have reverted back to in the last sort of 6-7 seasons. Obviously now driven by Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, but originally McLaren was obviously founded by Bruce McLaren, who I'm gonna guess must have driven this car, because he was an owner driver, which was is incredibly rare. But he was the owner of the team and a driver as well. This is a very different era of F1, obviously. Very, very, as you can see, very skinny cars, so much smaller, and obviously less safe. This was an era of Formula One where safety hadn't necessarily become the top priority yet, so it wasn't uncommon to see deaths at F1 races. But I think back in those days that was just seen as a risk that was taken by the driver, and therefore, if that happened when the racing was going on, then it was just as a result of the risk that the drivers took by getting in the cars to begin with. So obviously a completely different time. But these cars are very pretty. I do think these cars are very pretty, and it's always cool to see. Sometimes at F1 weekends or track days, things like Goodwood, when these old cars get fired up again, and it's cool not just because you get to see such an old machine running still so quickly, but it's incredible to see. I mean, even if I bring back in the McLaren, just about get them both in. Maybe that's better. Yeah, apologies for the loud noise there. So, I mean, this is 21 years of evolution, and just look how different they look. And then you think another 21 years from 1990 is 2011, and I would say that there's less difference between the 1990 and 2011 car than there is between the 69 and the 1990 cars. So this era of Formula One was one where was evolving very quickly. And we'll get to a few cars from the 70s, I think, really quickly. Apologies for that. But yeah, as I mentioned, iconic for different reasons. These early papaya McLarens, the very start of what would become one of, I would say probably the second most famous team in Formula One history, behind Ferrari. I would say so. Certainly in terms of longevity, there's maybe an argument for Williams back in the day, and obviously now Mercedes and Red Bull. But in terms of longevity, I think McLaren's been up there for a long time. So yeah, there we have the McLaren Ford M7C from 1969. Excuse me, sorry, I don't know, I've got something caught in my throat tonight, I can't quite seem to get rid of it. So now, this is a Lotus 72D Ford from 1972. Now these Lotuses, these early black and gold Lotuses are incredibly iconic. I'm not sure whether this in 1972, whether this is already a Colin Chapman Lotus, but yeah, as you can see, very pretty car in my opinion. And then we'll bring back in so I mean, even this is just 3 years of car evolution, but as you can see, the wing is so much bigger at the front and at the back. It's a lot more bulky. The engine is covered by what looks like an anvil. But yeah, I mean, you can see even from 3 years of car evolution that things were moving incredibly quickly. I wouldn't be able to tell you who drove this car. Unfortunately, I'm not. I think the 60s and 70s is probably the period of F1 I know the least about, apart from the sort of James Hunt, Niki Lauda stuff from the mid-70s. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that this is an incredibly pretty F1 car. Very, very pretty F1 car. One of the John Player special, Lotuses, very iconic combination. There's certain, you think of a certain manufacturer, and a specific livery often pops into your head, and this is what I think of when I think of Lotus. Not the, well, I suppose they are the same colour, the sort of 2011 to 2014 Lotuses, when Kimi used to drive for them, and Romain Grosjean and people like that. But yeah, these are the Lotuses I think of when I think of Lotus as a F1 manufacturer. So very, very pretty car, very iconic, and yeah, another great one to have in the collection. I just want to say that I'm showing obviously a few today, but I have a collection of probably 50 of these. There's obviously some that I've not shown today, but yeah, I do have more. So this is one that I wanted to include, the Mercedes W196 from 1954. I believe this is a Juan Manuel Fangio Mercedes, and this was one of the only F1 cars in history with closed wheel, with closed wheels. F1 is known as open wheel racing because there's no covers over the wheels, like normal cars. But this is one of the only F1 cars in history that had closed wheels. As I say, I think it was a Juan Manuel Fangio car, and I mean, in fairness, it does sort of look like just a normal car, right? I mean, let's bring back in the Lotus that we were just looking at. I mean, it's night and day, and this is 18 years of evolution. it's still the same type, effectively the same type of car. It's a Formula One car, but yeah, very interesting car to look back on, and very iconic for a different generation, I'm sure, than myself. You know, I was only born in the late 90s, so it's a different time. But you know, you talk to anybody who grew up around this time, I'm sure they would say that this is an iconic car. And as I said, I did want to include it purely based on the fact that it had the closed wheels, and so that makes it very unique. And so I think it's a very interesting car to look at. And as you can see, yeah, I'm in just a seat, a gear stick, and a steering wheel. Really nothing too fancy, but very, very cool to look at. So yeah, that's the Mercedes W196 from 1954. I've got a bit of a leaning tower of F1 going over here. Let me just make sure that they don't fall over, because I don't want a big loud bang. Okay. Let's go for this one. Now this iconic for a different reason, as you can see. The Tyrrell P34 six-wheeler from 1976. So as you can see there, 6 wheels, not 4. I do believe that this car was quite fast on certain tracks. I don't know if it took a win, but I do know that it did show speed, and teams were looking into the concept of 6-wheelers. But this Tyrrell is the one I always think of. I think there might have been another 6-wheeler, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But when someone says 6-wheeler, I think of this blue and yellow Tyrrell. Tyrrell obviously being a British F1 team, no longer about, but very, I think this is an incredibly iconic car, and one that's important to look at, because, yeah, I mean, it's one of certainly only a few 6-wheelers that have ever raced in Formula One, and so it's very iconic for that reason. Yeah. So it's just crazy to think how creative the mechanics of F1 teams become in pursuit of that little bit of extra speed, you know, and how the same set of rules can be interpreted so differently to gain, you know, even the smallest amount of lap time. You know, when we're talking about F1, you know, you can, round a several kilometre track, you could be looking at a second separating more than half of the grid. It's incredible. So to see the ways in which the engineers innovate, and you know, that the ways in which they find extra lap time, I think the very best ones, certainly at least, people like Colin Chapman and Adrian Newey, to name a few, can definitely be considered geniuses in their field, for sure. So yeah, the Tyrrell P34 six-wheeler from 1976, I just wanted to include this one because it's so different and out there, and I'm sure if you are even a semi-casual fan of F1, you will have at least come across that vehicle before. So yeah, let's set that aside. Next, we have the Williams Renault FW14B from 1992. I think this is the one that Nigel Mansell won the world title in 1992, when he took his famous Silverstone win, and everyone stormed the track. Very iconic scenes. Nigel Mansell, obviously a fantastic driver who missed out on a world title. I think it was the PK, or was it Prost? It was either PK or Prost in the 80s, and he battled with some very uncompetitive Ferraris. So yeah, when you think of, you say a manufacturer and think about a livery that pops straight into your head, this Williams Renault with the Canon logo on, always pops into my head when I think about Williams. I think about the Canon Williams Renaults, and I think about the early 2000s white and blue ones, and the ones with HP on and things like that. Those are the Williams I think of. So yeah, incredibly iconic car, driven by an incredibly iconic driver with an incredibly iconic livery. So just iconic all round, really, from the Williams FW14B. So yeah. Okay, finally, our very last one for today. We're going to round out with another Williams. We've got the FW18. Or is that, is that 18? Yeah, FW18. From 1996, this is the one that Damon Hill won his first and only World Championship in. He obviously came very close in, was it 94 or 95? I can't remember which one it was. 94 or 95, he came very close and crashed with Michael Schumacher on the last race of the year. But yeah, Damon Hill won his Drivers' Championship in this car, and this is another iconic Williams livery. Jacques Villeneuve won the Drivers' Championship the year after in a livery very similar to this. So again, these sort of early to mid 90s Williams were absolute beasts, and I believe were they Adrian Newey designed? I think they might have been. And this is another one of those absolutely incredible cars that took a lot of victories and was very, very quick. I think this was the first year that Michael Schumacher switched to Ferrari, and yeah, as I say, Damon Hill took his very first and only Drivers' Championship in this car. So any car that's won a Drivers' Championship is iconic, and yeah, just another iconic combination of Williams livery. So yeah, that was the Williams FW18. Very, very cool. So yeah, awesome. Okay, so guys, I really hope you've enjoyed. If you have, and if you're an F1 fan, please let me know down below. I'd love to get in a little dialogue. F1's one of those hobbies that I don't really have any of my sort of real life friends watch it, so it's something that I just have to sort of keep to myself, basically. But yeah, if any of you guys watch F1, it would be great to know down below, and let me know what your favourite car that we've seen today is, and B, what your favourite F1 car of all time is. What your favourite F1 car of all time is. If I was to choose myself, I would probably go with the 2008 McLaren, because that was when I was first getting into F1, and yeah, I am a Lewis Hamilton fan, so yeah, that's an iconic car for me. So yeah, or maybe the F2004. So yeah, those are my picks. So let me know down below what your favourite F1 car of all time is. If you've made it this far, thank you ever so much for sticking with it. It's something a little bit different than what we used to, but I hope you've enjoyed it nonetheless. With that said, thank you once again for watching. If you've enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you in the next video. Good night and goodbye.